What's going on, guys? It's Jay Watchers here, bringing you a guide for Chapter 9 Stage 7 of the hard difficulty campaign in Watcher of Realms. Before we jump into it, I'm going to go over the enemy mechanics as well as the heroes I've chosen for the team and why I'm using them. Starting off with enemies, we have the air units Lightning Guard and Thunder Guard, which will spawn at the top and bottom of the map. Both of them share a very low physical defense, so we will use physical damage units to get rid of them. We then have Restorer, who is a healer for the Uncommon Destroyer. He again also has a low physical defense, so we will use physical units to get rid of him. We then have the White Tower Scholar, a mage that's going to spawn at the top left, who also again has low physical defense, so we will be using physical damage to get rid of him. We then have the Uncommon Destroyer, who has massive physical defense but very low magic resistance, meaning we will use magic damage to get rid of him. It's also important to note that he does have a couple skills here. Combat mode, when he is hit he will greatly increase his movement speed, and he also has Smash, in which he will swing his chained hammer, dealing high AoE damage to the target and their adjacent ground heroes. Because of this, we will be making sure to have a very limited amount of units placed here. Finally, we have Therapis, who is the boss on the map. She has a low physical defense, so again we will be using physical damage to kill her. The main thing we need to pay attention to though are her monster skills. Starting off, she has a control immunity, in which she is immune to all control effects except slow. Her main attack, Blazing Fireball. Each attack deals magic damage 2 times to the last deployed hero and summons 1 fireball. Every time 4 fireballs are accumulated, she will then launch them together with the next attack, dealing magic damage. A couple things I want to note here is that this boss will always target your last deployed hero. This is her base attack, and therefore whoever gets placed last for us is going to be receiving the brunt of her. The fireballs, you can actually see her accumulate, and so a bit of advice I want to give is that when you do see all 4 around her, that is the most important time for you to start using your healer's ults. The next skill she has is Flame Rampage, in which you will inflict Flame Rampage upon 3 random targets, dealing magic damage and reducing their attack for 8 seconds. This is again completely random, so it's very important that we have all of our units within healing range of one another. The last skill and the most important skill to pay attention to is Meteoric Strike. With each loss of 30% HP, the boss will deal massive AoE magic damage to the last deployed hero and heroes within 3 tiles away from them, inflicting Flame Rampage on all targets hit. If you are struggling on stage 7, it is most likely because of Meteoric Strike, but thankfully we have a way to deal with that today. I have tried different ways to deal with this regarding lots of healers, but the amount of damage that the boss does with this skill, you just won't be able to make it through. And again, even 1 unit dying means we lose our 3-star clear, so it's really important that we get this as far away from us as possible. One final mechanic that I do want to note before we get into the team comp today: each tank is given a base attribute for defense and magic resistance. Some have much higher physical defense with low magic res, as you can see with Olag here, and then some have a lot higher magic res with perhaps less defense. Now, while Olag is strong enough to deal with both the Destroyer and the boss's damage, which are physical and magic, if you are struggling with him doing so, just bear in mind that he does have a very low magic resistance, and so if this is an issue for you, you can always bring a high magic resistance tank with you to place after Olag, and that way you separate the damage between the Destroyer and the boss. That way Olag only deals with the Destroyer, and then your magic resistance tank deals with the boss's attacks. Some units that are capable of this are Azor, who has a 2357 magic resistance in comparison to Olag's 700, and there is also the epic tank Meriel, who has a 1917 magic resistance. They will still need to have lots of health to survive the hit from the boss, but having that higher magic resistance should help you with some damage mitigation if the gear isn't quite helping you get over the mark. Before jumping into the team, I do want to note that Vierna and Vlad here are interchangeable and are not necessary. However, everyone else here you will require to do this run. Vierna can be replaced with any mage as long as they can deal enough damage to kill the Uncommon Destroyer, and Vlad is mainly just there at the end to deal some extra damage to the boss, and he has a lot of health, so he's not going to die too easily. Now let's get into the team we're using today. Starting off, we have Isolde. I will only be using her for her Lord bonus, which is a periodic shield applied to all faction members. However, you can put her down as a tank if absolutely necessary. We then have Olag, who is going to be doing the tanking for both the boss and the Destroyers. I have him geared out in very basic HP bonus gear. He doesn't have any real crazy sets going on other than a Mortal Warrior here on the side, and for those interested on the total HP, he has 86,774 and he has 5,943 defense. As for his skills, I have Silver Shield at level 4 and his ultimate at level 3. And for the artifact, I will be using the Watchguard's Unity, which simply gives him plus 10% HP. Next in our lineup is Maiden. We are going to be using her as a backup healer. Again, she's not in anything too crazy. I've got her at plus 200 attack speed, very simple HP bonus gear on, and an Immortal Warrior set on the left. She doesn't have very much healing effect, nor does she have too much defense. And again, her max HP, for those who want to know, is 44,849 with 2,067 total defense. For her artifact, I'm using the Brightroot Ring at plus 9, nothing crazy, but when HP is full, she will increase her healing effect by 30. Because of the random damage over time that the boss can deal, however, I would recommend perhaps something other than Bright Root. Having them at full HP is not going to be easy to sustain. However, I'm just using it for the buff in HP here. Next in our lineup is Vortex. For those who don't know, get to know, an incredible single target healer who, much like Maiden, is based off HP healing. Again, nothing too crazy going on here, just a HP bonus on the top and bottom with an attack speed in the middle, just to ensure he's dishing out as many heals as he possibly can. I then also have a reasonably nice life force set over here on the left. That puts his HP at a total of 40,760 and 834 defense. For Vortex's artifact, I am using Nephrite Folio, which increases his healing effect by 15 when HP is full, but again, I'm mainly just using this for the buff in his HP. Moving on to the star of the show, we have Decimus. He is going to be the whole reason we can do this without anyone dying, due to his passive skill Defiance. When his HP drops to 0, the hero will remain alive and continue to fight for 8 seconds. This gives us a perfect chance at the health thresholds to put him down, away from our team. He'll take the Meteoric Strike, and then when he goes into his Defiance and he's not dead, he'll then give us a chance to pull him out, which means we still got our 3-star clear. Decimus doesn't need any gear. We are literally going to be placing him in exactly as we hit the threshold. He'll then die as soon as the Meteoric Strike hits him, and then we take him back out. I want to make this very, very clear as well. Although there are other units that can stay alive after death, Decimus is the only one that's going to work here, due to his redeployment time being greatly reduced, down to 15 seconds. Moving on to our second row, we have Aeon as our Cultist Lord. Again, I'm not actually going to be using Aeon during this mission. She doesn't have anything equipped. I simply want her for the extra damage buff on units that are slowed. If you are using Iona, for example, instead of Vierna, this will be a great combo. You can also use Abizu for this too. Moving on, we have Vierna, who is going to be my mage DPS for this stage. As for gear, she does have some quite nice sets on. She has a left side Wicked Vengeance with a Cataclysm set on the right. I do also have Vierna's exclusive Bangle, which is giving me an extra 10% on her execution threshold, and it also increases the damage of her ult by 100%. Specifically for those with Vierna, she does not scale from attack speed, therefore I have tried to mainly aim for high crit rate, as much crit damage as possible, and as much attack as possible. For our artifact, I will be using Tidal Ring. Although the slow won't do anything for us regarding crowd control, it will actually proc Aeon's buff for the 20% damage on slowed units. Next we have Hollow, again another essential unit for the run. Not only is she a great healer, but she also is insane at rage regen, which will be helping Idril to get through her ults. As for her gear, it's nothing special. She's certainly not supposed to be in Soulbound Arcana, which is strictly for damage. It just happened to be the best pieces I had on the account. I have her in attack bonus, attack speed, and attack bonus. The attack speed just makes sure that she is healing as many people as possible, since her attack is plenty high for her heals anyway. And for those wondering, she is at 24,276 HP. On the left side, I do have a Light's Grace set. This is giving me a rage regen bonus of 10% and healing effect of 30, which just helps her to get round to her ult quicker, which again activates her rage regen for the team. For her artifact, I'm using the Bright Root Ring. Again, HP is hardly going to be full during this level, so it doesn't really have that much of an impact. I am strictly using it because of the stats that I have on it. Next up we have Vlad, who again can be interchanged with any other sort of tank or DPS unit for killing the boss at the end. I just like Vlad because of his very, very high, easily scalable HP, sitting at 101,905, and his very high base defense, giving him 6,247 total defense. For his gear, I do have him in an Unshaken Will tier 3 set, which gives him an extra 20% HP when deployed, and when attacked he will restore HP. I don't really make use of this since he is not attacked until the very, very, very end of the fight, and usually by then the boss is dead anyway. I just want to stress that Vlad, for those who don't have him, is really not making much of a difference here for me. For his left side, I do have him in an Immortal Warrior set as well, which is again just buffing his HP and defense. For Vlad's artifact, I do have his Impaler exclusive on, which again increases his max HP by another 23% and increases his block by 1. The block by 1 won't actually benefit us at all here, mainly this is just supplying some extra stats for us. Finally, we have Idril. She is again going to be one of the key pieces of this run. I am unsure of a way to do this without Idril, however there are definitely ways around it, especially with some of the invis units in the game, such as Hatsa, Ruin Hollow, and Eliza. However, for this run, it is much easier to do with Idril, so if you do have her, please do use. Before I get into her gear, it is important to note that I do have her Awakened 5, and for those who don't, I really highly recommend that you put all of your epic soul stones into this to get her there. Her A5 effect allows her to regain 3 seconds on her ultimate every time she gets a kill, which means we can sustain her ultimate as long as possible to deal with as many enemies as possible, since she will be our singular method for dealing with both air units that spawn at the top and the bottom. For her gear, I am using a very, very nice set of Infernal Roar and Calamity. Mainly, you just want to make sure she has enough attack to overcome the defense of the enemies. For reference, I have her at 15,000 attack. Again, another important part about Idril is her artifact Idril's Gaze. Dealing crit damage has a 25% chance to ignore 40% of the target's defense and magic resistance for 3 seconds. I do want to stress that Idril is a very key part of the run here, and that if you do not have the Idril's Gaze and you do not have her Awaken 5, I cannot promise that this is going to work. However, she still is really good without those things, and perhaps with some extra rage regen on her instead to account for that, she can get to her ult quicker anyway. And as for the artifact, you may be able to use something such as the Shadow Gaze, which every 5 attacks increases her attack by 10% up to 2 stacks, and this scales all the way to 40% attack total. So there are definitely options, but I just don't want to, at this point in the video, guarantee you the run if you don't have an Idril with these kind of stats. So guys, just to recap, this is the team we're going to be using. The essential units are everyone but Viana and Vlad. I do highly recommend your best DPS build going onto Idril, and your best tank build going onto Olag. And especially for those who are slightly undergeared, it is important to remember that Idril will get a damage bonus every time others ult, so if needs be, you can use Vortex and Hollow and Maiden and the other ults around the team to buff her damage up. So without further ado, let's get into it. So straight off the bat, we are going to place down Idril over on this tile facing this way. As soon as we have the available cost, we are then going to get Vortex down, as these air units will start to hit Idril. And as soon as Idril's ult's available, we will use it. If we don't, she will not have a great time clearing these air units. As you can see, she takes some damage, but we can get her ult off. She will clear this one and then move over to here. We then want to get our mage in straight away. This will give time for Viana to get her ult, but also get some hits in as the enemy comes into range. I'm then going to use Viana's ult now to clear him. And then Idril will turn around and get some damage on the mage. Don't worry if he doesn't die, because Vortex will heal Idril, and then as the enemy comes around, Idril will finish him off. Now the boss is going to spawn in. This is where I'm going to pause. Here is where we need to really consider who we are placing, as again, the last deployed hero is the one who's going to get hit by the boss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by placing all of my healers. Then I'm going to place Vlad as the second to last, and then Olag as the last unit. Hollow will go here, so she rage regens Idril. Maiden will go here, so she heals Olag and also Hollow. I will then place Vlad down here next to Idril, and he will block the boss when she comes round. And then finally Olag here next to Viana. We are now basically finished with the team. As long as you have good enough gear, they will all keep each other alive. Viana's ult we can use here on the Destroyer to get them killed, as well as the Restorer. And then when the air units come in, we can now use Idril's ult to clear them. And again, we can now use Healer's ults as well to buff the damage that she's doing. So as you can see, she's hitting for 15k, and if I use Vlad, it will buff it up to 55k. Again, really important at this stage to pay attention to the boss's health. If you have a stronger Idril, she may already be at 70%, in which you will really want to prepare to use Decimus. We're now going to get another wave of a healer and the Destroyer. So again, we'll wait for them to come into range. We will use Maiden just to supply some heals to Olag, and then Viana to ult. With Viana now in damage range of the boss, we want to very closely pay attention to this number up at the top. And as soon as we get around 72%, we are going to turn it on to 1 times and prepare to place Decimus. The air unit's back in, we can now ult Idril. It's really important that you do not ult Idril while the Destroyer is here, since it will take all of her aggro. And now that Idril is doing damage to the boss, we need to pause, put it into 1 times. I like to hold Decimus, so the game is as slow as possible. And you can actually see each arrow that hits as well as the percent that goes down. And so we can slowly track when Decimus needs to be placed. I like to place him in at about 71.8%, just to ensure that he doesn't get killed by anything. Again, of course, that flaming skill, she can target units to kill them, so just being mindful of that. And now we're at about 71.8%. We're going to place Decimus, ult to buff Idril's damage, and then that will cause Meteoric Strike to hit Decimus, and then we can pull him out, and it will knock out as a death. So we're now basically just going to repeat that entire process. Again, at 40% we are going to have another meteoric strike come up, and then 10%, and then we will finish the map. So again, we're going to have another round of the destroyer and the healer come in. Same thing. We will use Maiden, and if we need Vortex to keep Olag alive, and then Vierna to kill these two. Like so. We then have this guy come in, but we're not really too worried about him at the moment, because I want to be mindful that there are going to now be more more air units coming into the map. Here they are. So now I will ult Idril with Hollow. She will then get rid of him, as well as the air units that come in. Here's the big one. And now just be mindful that she is now going to flip back over to the boss and start dealing damage to him. What we can do here is we can ult some people to get that damage buffed. It looks like here she's not actually going to get him down to 40%, which is perfectly fine. And so we will just continue to wait. Who I will use here now is Hollow to rage regen Idril, since we do preferably want to kill the boss before she gets over here. We have another mage round coming up, which we again will just be using Vierna to kill them. And we can use Maiden to ensure that Olag doesn't take too much damage while the destroyer is hurting him too. Get Vierna's ult in to kill. Idril's now ready. We are actually going to trigger her early now. We're going to use her to kill the mage. We are then going to trigger Hollow straight away to also buff her damage, but her rage regen as well. And again, we now just want to prepare for the meteoric strike again. This one is a bit dicey since Decimus is going to get placed right next to the boss, so we want to place him as late as possible, but also as careful as possible. So at 41.6% we will get him down, and as you can see, meteoric strike hits Decimus, and we can take him back out again. Unfortunately here we do not have Idril's ult now for these anti-air units. Air units, not fucking anti-air. For the air units. Thankfully she can actually kill these two and has enough time to deal with this one anyway, and she does have the mage up here, Vierna, to support her worst case. We also do have a Hollow ult as well, which is going to buff her rage and hopefully get her back to that ult as soon as possible. I can also use Vortex here to shield everyone with the damage that's being taken. And again, I can use Vierna's ult here to deal some damage to the ad here. And even with not ulting Idril there, we still get the kills. Now, with the boss on the corner, we can use Idril. I will use Maiden to buff her attack, as well as Olag to then buff her next attack. And then I will use Vlad to buff her next attack. We can speed this up a little bit here, but again, just be mindful that at 10%, she is going to do another meteoric strike. You can see we're getting pretty close. I also need to be mindful that when Vlad starts hitting, this percent is going to start going down real fast. So from here on out, I'm going to let it 1 times. There's no point rushing it, and just make sure that we get this Decimus placement, because if she does place meteoric strike, at least Idril and Maiden are going to die. So here you go, we're nearing 11% here. So we're going to place Decimus, and as soon as she ticks over, Decimus takes the hit, take her out. We can now ult everybody, get the boss killed, and that is the stage cleared. Before we end the video, is that as you saw at the end there, Decimus did take a hit from the boss. While it didn't cause an issue because he is still the last deployed hero in his Defiance passive, what can be an issue is if you place Decimus too early in preparation, he'll then activate his Defiance skill too early, which will then end before you actually pass over the HP percent threshold. Therefore, it's just really important to place it as close as you can there. But guys, that's how you clear stage 9 and 7. I hope that helps, and if you've got any questions in the comments, please do let me know down below. Hope it helps. Have a good week, guys. Take care.